Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Lunch with Jim. I'm Jim Conry, the Public Information Coordinator at Stevenson High School, and today we have a special guest. This is Troy Gobble, our principal at Stevenson High School.
How's everybody doing today?
So before we get rolling with our questions, just a real quick bio of Troy, some background information. You may not know much about him, but I'm going to inform you right now. Troy was born and raised in the wilds of Western Illinois.
That's right.
Escaped from captivity, went to the University of Illinois, I believe. That's right.
Big win last night, by the way.
Big win for the Illini.
Yeah.
You studied physics, among other things,
Yep.
right?
Chemistry.
Now, were you inspired by Letterman dropping melons off of fruit off the rooftops? Is that why you want to be a physics guy?
I wasn't, but I actually got to meet him at one point in my life, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a wonderful guy.
Okay. And then you were also the inspiration for the Flying Illini Final Four team, right?
That is true. I was there when that happened, and they actually did need me for that win, for sure.
Did you ever have Kenny Battle in one of your classes?
No, I had Kendall Gill in one of my classes.
Kendall Gill in one of your
I did, and it was great. He was a wonderful guy.
Awesome.
My psych class.
So after graduating from U of I, you did graduate from U of I, right?
Allegedly.
Okay. After graduating from U of I, your first job as a teacher was at Carl Sandburg High
right.
School.
In Orland Park.
And you were required to read all the works of Sandburg, I believe. Is that right?
Only the short poems.
None of his Lincoln stuff?
No, none of that.
Oh, wow.
No.
Okay. I thought they had higher standards than that.
That's funny.
So you taught at Sandburg for
10 years.
10 years.
10 years, yep.
Wow. And then you moved on to Riverside Brookfield.
Riverside Brookfield, yep.
And you were there for 10 years?
10 years
as well.
Yeah, I have a decade. It's like fish, right? Start to get old after a while.
Oh, wait a minute. The clock's ticking then.
I'm
not even going to say how long you've been at Stevenson.
Yeah,
so,
it's year 9.
So you started out teaching at Riverside and you worked your way up. You became the director of the science department.
That's right.
At one point. And let's see, 2006, you were named the physics teacher of the year in Illinois, I believe.
I was. It was a wonderful honor. And, there's a lot of great work happening all over the place. And I really appreciate that they took the chance to say that for me.
Also, I think is really cool that when you were at RB, you were one of the assistant football coaches, and the head coach's name was Otto, which I think is just awesome. Otto Zeman.
Otto Zeman, that's right. Otto Zeman was one of the biggest characters that I've ever met in my entire life. Yeah. And he's really changed the way high school football is played in Illinois with the spread offense that he introduced. He's great.
Yeah, you threw the ball like 90 times a game, right?
We did, yeah. We, as a matter of fact, there was a game where we let the other team score because we thought we would score more points by getting the 8, by getting a touchdown and a 2-point. So we let them score a couple of times to get the ball back.
That's a Belichick move.
That is exactly what it is.
That's smart. Okay, so you came to join us at Stevenson in 2010,
That's
I believe, right?
Yeah.
And so you were an assistant principal for a couple of years before being named the principal.
2 years I was the assistant principal.
Yeah. So this is actually your 9th year as principal at Stevenson?
It is my 7th year as principal.
7th year as principal.
And 9th year here.
9th year at Stevenson.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, I was a journalism major, not a mathematics major.
That's right.
So
you only have 10 fingers.
So also, Troy lives in our school district. He has a wife, 3 children.
I do.
And several creatures of various types running around your stately mansion.
Yeah, my wife was a biology teacher before she stayed home, and anything that moves, walks, or crawls, she will adopt. So we find a lot of strange animals in our house.
Excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
And that doesn't even count some of the administrators who come to visit you.
That is true. Right? That is true. Yeah, she throws them out.
As she should.
Yes.
All right, so let's get serious here because time is precious. We're going to dive in with some questions that are commonly asked of you by parents and probably students too, I would suspect. Folks, if you're watching live, we encourage you to post questions on the Facebook page. We'll try to address them as much as we can or as quickly as we can. We also have some questions sort of prepared in advance for Troy, so I'm not completely blindsiding him except for this introductory section, which he had no idea was coming, but he'll forgive me.
I will, absolutely.
All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is something that is on the immediate minds of a lot of people at Stevenson, and that is snow days. Closing the school because of the weather.
That's right.
Last night we had some concerns with an ice storm that was going to hit the area. Now, fortunately, things turned out well, and it didn't transpire, but there was a little bit of nervousness. And then last week, of course, we had one official snow day and 2 days in which we utilize what we call e-learning, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But I wonder, first of all, if you could maybe just sort of walk us through the process. How do we decide whether we're going to call off school or not?
It's been an amazing year for that. So 4 days, counting the day in late November, that we've not been able, it's not safe enough for kids to come to school, which that's different than any of my years here. That's a large number. So one of the things we do, we're constantly watching the weather. Just for instance, last night we had to cancel all the activities after 6 o'clock. So we're keeping a close eye on the hour by hour weather. And our question is always, how do we make sure that our teachers and the students and anyone who needs to come to Stevenson High School is safe? And so we make those determinations in a very, it's not necessarily like a cut and dried way. Every weather pattern, every weather idea is a little different. And so you have to make some judgments. Typically, you will see, we're going to contact the bus company. Can the buses run? Can the bus drivers even get to the bus company to drive the buses? Will we have enough buses to operate school? Another question is, how cold will it be? And that number is not a number that, it's not like, well, this is the direct cutoff. But as you can see, anything below -40, -45 on the wind chill is certainly unsafe for a student to be standing outside the bus, especially on a bad weather day when we can't be convinced that the bus will show up exactly when we think it should. And so if we know that a kid might be standing outside a little longer than we would hope, we don't want that to happen. Typically what does happen is, there's 4 or 5 of us that will get in contact with each other, and we'll drive around the neighborhoods and just see how safe is the roads at about 4 in the morning. And if it doesn't feel safe enough for us to be out there, then clearly it's not safe enough for the families and the kids. And that's when we begin to think about canceling school. One thing that's a little different than when I was a kid or even 10 years ago, we see a lot more schools making the choice to cancel school the night before. And I think it's a really wise decision often because it lets you as a family plan better for the kids being home. But I would prefer to, on the nights, to maybe say, let's try a late arrival and then decide in the morning if we can push it, if we can't come. Because, of course, we want you to come to school. There are required number of school days. We've got to get them all in, and that's how we want that to work.
Now, last week, one of the things that we did to make sure we get in our required number of school days is we took advantage of a new state law that sort of loosened the definition of a school day. And so we utilized for 2 straight days something that were called e-learning days, in which students stayed home, so did teachers, but at home, the students would go online and they would find out what they were to do that day from teachers in all their different classes. So I wonder if maybe you could just talk a little bit about how things went from our perspective.
Sure. As a matter of fact, I just met with our student congress, which is a group of kids. It's a representative from every second-hour class. So it's sort of what we think of as the best cross-representation of students that we can get here. And I had an interview. I said, tell me about your e-learning day experience. And overwhelmingly, they were excited not to have to come back to school after Memorial Day. They understood the reason. And they said that the process worked pretty well. They were able to find their homework assignments through email or Haiku or Google Classroom. And some of them were disappointed because a snow day typically means, pajamas and movies all day long or outside playing. And I think, that's clearly a different idea. But deep down, nobody wants to come back to school after Memorial Day. That's just not something that we would ever want to do. And what I loved about it was I had multiple kids tell me today, it was meaningful. I was able to do some work. I feel like I learned some things. I feel like I am in a different place in my class. And I think it really helped them move forward. So the best thing that could happen. Now, if you happen to be on someone who's watching the state legislature, they're actually talking about whether this law should remain. And I think while the original law wasn't written about snow days, I do think that it was a success for sure. And they've been running this pilot in about 10 districts around the state. I think they've had a lot of success. And I just hope we can move forward, keeping the ability to do 2 or 3 of these a year, because it is really wonderful for planning that end of the year and keeping the continuity of learning when it should be happening. So I'm hoping that this is a thing that sticks.
Now, another question that came up last week after the official snow day that we took on Monday was, What are we going to do about seniors and final exams? Because
exactly.
everything got pushed forward today
That's
at
right.
the end of the year. So do we have a plan at this point?
Yeah, so we're not going to release the schedule yet because we figure there's a good chance we might have another weather event in the next month or two. The way that it would work now is that seniors would continue to take their finals on that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in May, as they are currently scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else, though, will be taking their finals on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the seniors can't take finals on Friday because graduation is that night.
Yep.
We have to make sure they've completed all of their requirements for graduation. So senior finals won't move. Even if we had 5 more snow days, they're staying where they are because our graduation night will be what it is. We've reserved the Sears Center.
Mm-hmm.
But we will do those. We've done this a couple times in the past.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. We'll do those final exams in the field house. And so they'll be able to come down to the field house and take the final exams, and they will not take final exams with their other students. And it'll be a really great experience for everybody. It's actually, some kids have preferred that
Mm-hmm.
from the typical model. And so then everybody else will do the normal schedule on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So we're gonna wait a little while. Then it sounds like to see if there's any more snow days.
We're gonna wait until we're sure, and then we'll put out a final schedule probably right after spring break when we can assume we're not going to miss any more days.
Okay. So that we'll make the decision like May 1st based on this area.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You never know what you're going to get.
Now, you mentioned something a few moments ago when we were talking about e-learning. You talked about how kids would go on to Google Classroom or P-Learning or other. I think one of the common questions you probably get from parents is, how come I have to go to 4 or 5 different websites to find out what my kids' homework or grades are? Why can't we just have like a one-stop shopping?
That's a really great question. And I hope we have done that for a thoughtful reason, but we also understand some of the frustrations that's provided people. So when we went to become a one-to-one school and we bought iPads for everyone, we knew that we needed to have a platform for that e-work. So how is it that we're going to interact with our electronic documents, and how do I track the school and all that work? And we tried to let people have options because we didn't want to pick one in case it wasn't great. And so we've explored Haiku, and then which is now called P-School. We've explored Google Classroom. Recently, a few of our classes are using a program called Canvas. And I think based on all of that evidence, we've decided that Canvas is the most effective for us at our level. So next year, our big goal is to have every class, every teacher operating underneath the umbrella of Canvas. Now, that doesn't mean we still can't use some of the power of Google Classroom. We'll embed that into the Canvas. Mm-hmm. But the beauty of that is you'll click onto one app and you'll be able to see all of the different classes you have, and you'll click on them and it'll take you right there. And so you'll immediately know what your assignments are, what things are due, maybe even have a group chat, and it'll all be in one program. So I think we're really excited to finally make that transition and commit. So I think that'll be great.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hey, speaking of hallelujah, last question related to snow days. Are you and Dr. Twaddell going to do one of those funky videos where you announce the closing of school, like those 2 guys in Michigan who sang to Hallelujah, the Leonard Cohen song?
I did see a few of those things, and I am jealous of the singing voice of some of my colleagues that are principals. And I think if I were to sing in public, it would probably close the school down for more than a day or 2. So I don't know that would ever be, but I will throw out the challenge. If Dr. Twaddell would like to dance, if we would like to do an interpretive dance presentation of a snow day, I'm in.
Oh, let's make sure we get that on. We'll store that somewhere.
Yes, definitely save that one.
So before we completely leave snow days, just to clarify, if you're the parent of a senior, we'll be letting you know what the schedule is going to be. But it's pretty sure at this point it's going to be that Tuesday through Thursday in May, just like it was scheduled to.
Yeah, the
originally.
Seniors will be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, with Friday being graduation practice and then graduation. That won't change. But we won't put out a formal schedule until we're sure that we can be solid on that.
Yeah, and we're noticing on our page here that Lois Salters just sent us a really nice note about her son. He went to Stevenson, got fast-tracked for a job in Phoenix,
Wow.
and to relocate actually a corporate in Chicago because the CEO knows how good Stevenson is. That's pretty high praise.
That's incredible.
That's awesome.
One of the things we've worked hard over here over the last few years is to develop the idea of a portrait of a graduate. What is it we expect our kids to act like? What skills do we want them to have when they leave us? And I think one of the things that colleges and jobs and employers really appreciate about Stevenson is that we hold that high level for our kids and that they can expect that kind of success from their students. So it's great to hear. Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Louis. That's great news, and let us know more. Let us know more. We'd be happy to tell the Alumni Association so they can pass the good news as well.
Make sure they tell that company that my kids will be graduating in 9 years from college, and they would love to have a job as well, in whatever that field is.
Okay, so let's move on to another area that gets a lot of attention these days, and that's safety. School safety. It's a big deal. Obviously.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've been at Stevenson for 25 years. You've been in education for almost longer than I have, actually. And I mean, you've seen a lot of change, and we've lived through Columbine and everything. So safety is a big deal. So I'm sure you get just sort of a general question from parents all the time. What is Stevenson doing to make sure that my kid is safe? What do we do?
So the number one thing, hands down, we are a school with a lot of resources, and we put a lot of different things into place. But the number one way that we keep the kids here safe is by taking care of them and their social emotional needs, and watching out for each other. So when I think about at the fundamental level, if you see something, if you hear something that sounds strange to you and you report it to us, we will talk to those kids, we will find out what's going on, and we will do our very best to intervene before it happens. Because what we don't want to get into is in a situation where we're trying to keep ourselves safe in a dangerous situation. We know that prevention is the number one way we're going to get ourselves out of any safety situation. And so that has been fundamental to our work here. Student wellness is critical for what we do, and you can see that in our work with the scope meetings. As freshmen and sophomores and juniors, you get a chance to interact with your counselor and your family so that they get to know you a little better. We've also instituted the Signs of Suicide program over the last few years, where we're thinking very carefully about the people around you and the people that you know, and looking for those signs that might indicate that something is amiss. So those, to me, that's the fundamental nature. Our teachers and students are so observant and caring of each other. It's my favorite thing about this place. We have such kind kids, and they are concerned about each other, and they want to take care of each other in all those situations. I absolutely love that about this place. So that's number one. Then number two, we have worked very hard to build a model of security with adults around the building who have their eyes on kids and are taking care of kids in almost every place. And in any place that we don't have an adult, there is a camera that's watching all of the events. And somewhere in the building, there's one of those rooms like you might envision in the Batman movie, with all the TVs watching all those cameras. And we have people constantly monitoring. There are folks monitoring the outside of the school and the inside of the school. And while there are some things that about our security we want to keep private, because we want to make sure that if someone did have bad intentions, they don't know exactly what that is. I can also tell you that we have worked hard to build a school that is as secure as possible. And one of the most interesting things that we implemented about 4 years ago is an automatic door locking system. And so we all have an ID. We don't have keys to our classrooms anymore. And with a single flip of a switch, we can lock every building and every door all throughout this building, outside, inside, and begin that process of keeping us safe. We're really excited. The board is discussing helping us develop a safety video going forward, where we're going to talk more about, we're going to present to kids what it might look like in a situation where we aren't safe, and what are some options for them. Because we want to make sure that kids are thinking, what would I do if? This year, one thing that Ken Latka added was the situational awareness day, which I thought was really brilliant. And every period, just for 2 minutes, we said, if something were to happen in the room that you're in right now, wherever that might be, what would you do? And we just asked the kids. Each teacher ran that conversation, and we discussed where in that room would be the best place to hide. How would you barricade the door? What would that look like if we needed to? And by doing that every single period, kids are able to think and have it in their mind, like, what would I do? And I think most important is that conversation about the lunchroom or sort of the unstructured spaces. And we had it there too.
Yeah.
What would you do in this case? Where would you go? Yeah. Think through what that would look like. And I think that pre-planning for our kids is so critical.
It makes sense, because you never know when something's going to happen. It's not like you can, you know it's coming at 10:38 on Tuesday.
Exactly. And the difference between a tornado drill and a lockdown drill, if you have a tornado drill, it doesn't really matter what room you're in, you're going to go do the same behaviors. Yeah. But in a lockdown drill, different rooms, there's different kinds of safety in each of those rooms. And so it's important for kids to choose the right path. And so that's why we decided to do it every single period instead of just a one drill.
Now, you talked about this, the safety video that the school board approved to work on. Another thing the school board approved recently was the hiring of a second resource officer, yes, a police officer, to be on campus at Stevenson. And that gentleman, Michael Lill, has joined us. He's on board now. I guess the question, though, is, well, does that mean that Stevenson is a less safe place if we needed to add another resource officer?
That's a great question. One of the things you might have noticed if you drove on campus recently is that we're adding a whole new set of classrooms to the East building. And when we finish that, right now, our building is pretty much 2/3 of the students are in the West building and 1/3 of the students are in the East building. But once we complete that construction, it's going to be more like 50-50. And so as we grow, if we get up to 4,500 students, there will be approximately, 2,000, 2,200 kids on each side. And so one of the things we wanted to make sure, because the run, as I have made multiple times from one side to the other, takes a little bit of time, we wanted to make sure that there was a police officer on both sides to provide safety if something were to occur. So the other thing that it's really added for us, if for instance, one of our police officers is called off to testify or they have to leave campus, we always have a human on campus. And in the past, it was a little tricky for us. They would try to get one of the guys who were out driving around a car to come spend time here. But of course, if they got a call, they would have to leave. So now we're confident that from 7 in the morning till 6 at night, there's a police presence here at school. And what I love about both of them, they're so phenomenal. We're a learning institution. We want to make sure that everything about us is about learning. And when they interact with kids, even if the kids have made a bad choice, I see them teaching kids what proper behavior might be. And so I really appreciate that too.
We've got a comment here from a member of our class of 2015, and I think some of the things that you said in regards to safety and how, really it goes beyond just the obvious brick and mortar type things that you can do to make a school safe. I think she was really impressed here. She's saying that mental emotional health programs are very important, and of course at Stevenson we have for a long time now been really working hard to incorporate what's called social emotional learning in the classroom. So I don't know if you had any comments about that.
I would love to talk about that. Over the last 4 or 5 years, the student wellness piece has really been fundamental to what we do. We've moved the start time, we've moved final exams before break, and all of these are in a way to think through, like, how are we taking care of our kids? So the state of Illinois, in its wisdom, has developed a set of social emotional learning targets that we hope are implemented and used throughout the schools. And we took this to heart immediately, because what we don't just want to say, this is your SEL activity. Today we're going to work on your social emotional well-being. We expect that we're working on it every single day. So how are you thinking differently about your own self-awareness or your social interactions or the decision-making that you do? And this, we've worked in some of the board presentations have just been phenomenal about how our teams at school have integrated this. And so they're teaching group interaction and a concept in math right next to each other. So when I ask you four to work together on a math problem, I don't want the kid who's the best at math doing the problem while the other three watch. I want to build a conversation that gets them talking about math. And so what happens is the social emotional learning becomes embedded in the learning process. And it's about not just the content, but the lifelong skills that they have. So I really think that when we're doing school at the highest level that we can, which I hope, I expect us to be the best high school in the nation, and when we're doing it really well, it's because we are not just teaching content. We are helping the kids learn more about themselves.
Also, Victoria mentions that she found that Stevenson was actually harder academically academically than college for her. You probably hear that a lot, I suppose.
I hear that often, and it's okay. I want this to be a challenging school, but I also want to make sure that while kids are here, they're having time. I don't want them to feel like it's a grind. And so, one of the things we've been thinking a lot about lately is like, what's the role of homework in a kid's life? And what does it mean to have too much homework or not enough homework? And I think it can go either way. And I think it's interesting to consider, if I want to take an AP class and that AP class gives me an hour and a half or 2 hours of homework every night, and I'm an athlete, and we hope that you're going to be a good son or daughter, go have dinner with your family and do those things. How does that, when does sleep happen? And so I really have been pushing people in our conversations recently to consider how can we be more efficient with the practice that we do with kids. And when we're sending them off, we have 175 days of school, right, that we have to interact with them. How do we maximize that and minimize the amount of stuff we're asking them to do outside of school? And so I appreciate that, Victoria, but I also hope that, I hope we can work on that a little bit.
Well, hope things are going well for you wherever you are in college.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Keep us posted on how things are going for you. One other quick safety question I wanted to toss out at you. You mentioned cameras around the school, and there's a lot of them. Have we ever considered putting cameras in the classroom?
Yeah, so philosophically, we put cameras wherever there is not an immediate adult observing and watching kids.
Okay.
And so in a classroom, you've got a teacher who's in charge of the classroom, and that to us is enough to indicate safety and that there's someone there to be observing what's happening at all times.
Right.
So we have never wired those. The other thing is, if we were to do that, because it would add 230 cameras to the amount of cameras that our camera room has to monitor, and there would be no way to monitor that many in real time. And so our expectation is, if there's an adult in that space, we might not need a camera because that person is making the observations that we would hope and need to keep kids safe.
Okay. Before we move into the next area, there's a question here that's right up your alley. It has to do with sort of science, right?
All right.
We recently hosted our annual VEX robotics competition here at the school, and we did quite well. Qualified 4 different robots, I think, for state, and we're the 2-time defending state champion, I believe, in robotics.
That is absolutely true.
So Diana has a question. She says, my first grader was very excited to see the VEX robotics competition and to see girls on the teams. I wish there were more opportunities for her to see girls with those interests. So I think maybe what Diana's driving at is sort of this, and this isn't just unique to Stevenson. I think there's a nationwide move to try to get more girls involved in what are called STEM type careers or studies. What do you say about that?
I think that's a great question. And I was a science teacher and a science department chair for years. And so this is something that I was keenly focused on in my early career. And I taught AP physics at Carl Sandburg High School. And my class of 24 would be 20 boys often. And what I find here is when I walk into one of those advanced classes to observe, it doesn't look like that anymore, especially at Stevenson High School. When we print out, and we monitor for demographics in all our classes to make sure that, all groups are being represented. We have just as many girls taking our AP Physics 1 class as boys. We see just as many girls taking that AP Biology class. The number of girls that have been taking our Project Lead the Way engineering and design programs have grown every year. As a matter of fact, we've been purposeful in hiring a few females in those roles too, to definitely give role models for kids. And so there is nothing that excites me more. I have 2 young girls who both love science. The poor kids, right? Their dad's a physics teacher and their mom's a biology teacher. They didn't have a choice from the beginning. They'll both be lawyers, right? That's the way that'll work out. But at this point, they are excited about that work. And what I love about all parts of our district, whether it's District 96 or 102 or 103, is you really see, there are the before and after school activities that they offer, and they are offered to boys and girls. They're all about a lot of STEAM and STEM possibilities. And so I really think that's a power of the school, is that we get so many girls into those opportunities. So I really love the question, and I hope that when your daughter in first grade, so we've got, I'll do the math quick, 7 more years, 8 more years before you show up, we would love to have her take every class we have here. So please join in.
I see we've been joined by a 1992 graduate. Hello, Cindy. Welcome, and feel free to post a question if you've got one. In your time as principal,
my first year teaching.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Do you still remember some of your first students? You ever stay in contact with?
I get, it's interesting to be a teacher. You will get random emails, you'll just open up your email one day and it'll be like, "Hi, Mr. Gobble, you might remember me from 23 years ago," or whatever. And so those are really special to me. If you're out there listening, send them in. I would love to hear them. An interesting fact, there have been 4 people that work here at Stevenson that I taught their spouses.
No kidding.
So I've got the chance to interact with them at our chilly nights for the football game or the basketball game.
Oh,
and so it's always great to get to check in. It's been really cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, one of the things that has probably been maybe the most notable initiative in your time as principal has been the incorporation or the shifting of the grading practices at Stevenson. So we've been moving away from the traditional A, B, C, D, although kids get an A, B, C, D, or F at the end of the semester, but we're really moving towards something called what we call evidence-based reporting. This is our 3rd year of full implementation of it, is it?
Well, this is honestly our 7th year of some small number of teams doing it. So at first it was just 1 or 2 teams, and we've been moving along, adding teams every year. We are now about 75% of the academic teams in the school are using EBR. Yeah. So I think, and at this point, it seems like, I don't know if folks realize this, but once a month, you and the superintendent have a meeting with a randomly selected group of parents. And it seems like, a few years ago, the questions about EBR were, what is EBR? I don't understand. But now things have shifted and folks seem to understand more because a lot of our younger students, they're coming from the junior highs where they're already using standards-based grading, which is the other kind of phrase that you could say for evidence-based reporting. So I guess maybe one question on this is the cynical part of me asking it. In education, there's no cynical part.
There is a very, very cynical part. Over the years in the education world, there's been stuff that's come and gone. So how do we know that EBR is not just another fad, right? How do we know that this is going to have some lasting impact?
Yeah, I really think when you come at it from the question of like, why am I averaging a quiz that I took in October with a quiz that I take in December when they're on completely different topics? Why would I take those 2 scores, add them up and divide to get an average for my quiz score? They're not related in any way other than they happen to be the same type of assessment. Same is true for homework or tests. It makes no sense at all to structure a points-based system around averaging the types of assessments in a class. So when you get past that and you think like, well, what should I be measuring? Well, I should be measuring your ability to do different parts of the work. If you're a coach, for instance, when I want you to learn how to, shoot or to block someone, I'm going to talk you through the 4 or 5 steps, and I'm going to make sure you've mastered each of those skills so that you can move forward. And I'm not going to, at the end of it, say, you know what, you were good 72% of the time. What good does that do as a kid to know that number? But if I get done and I tell you in your jump shot, you know what, the real problem is you don't bring your elbow underneath the ball so that you have a straight shot. Like, I can give you a skill that you can fix. So our goal is to build a school that is in that same model, where if I'm talking about math class, I'm going to say, what I don't want to give you is a percentage feedback on a quiz. I want to say, or how many you got right. I want to say, in general, if you miss a problem, you are missing it because of this. So you aren't able to model your equation with a graph. That's a skill. I can work on teaching you that, and I can give you the feedback that says you need to get better at that. And so what's happened over time, elementary schools, if you want to know where good education happens, you look at the grade schools. They are always on the forefront of the best way to teach. They were the first ones to put kids at tables. They were where kids are collaborating together. They were the first ones to consider this standards-based grading idea. So they start saying, it doesn't make any sense. If a kid is learning like the ABCs, you don't say, well, you got a 72% and you don't know P, Q, and X, right? You would say, I need to help you learn P, Q, and X. This is some skill that I need you to get. And so they've been doing this standards-based grading thing for years. what it's done is it's slowly working its way up. And most people, the argument is, well, colleges don't do it that way. And I would argue they are the least, they have the most inertia, they change the least. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, the best work is done in elementary school. So I'm happy to follow what they do. And because it's worked there for 25 years, there's no doubt that it will work in a school. And it will work for, if I'm teaching you science, what do you know about the scientific method? How can you model? Like, there's very fundamental skills that I want you to be able to do. I'm positive that it will work. Now, we've built a system, and that system isn't perfect. And one of my favorite parts about those Monday morning meetings is hearing people give us feedback about, as a parent, here's what I can't understand, here's how you could get better. And we have changed the system every single year. And we're growing and making it better and making it better. And I think that's the reason why we didn't transition everybody at once. Because if we had done the whole school into standards-based grading, one, we would have had to get 315 teachers to agree on how to do it. And two, we've been able to learn so many lessons on a smaller scale that have made it better for the larger group. And I predict that if you come and look at it 5-6 years from now, it will be even better than it is now. And so the other part of it that I think is really important to say is this is about, how do I get kids to grow? And if I'm going to keep track of every time you do an assessment, I'm going to keep averaging all those points up. If you get a C and 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 then an A, and you figured out how to do that, that average is going to be a C plus, right? And instead of what you really now know, which is, I can do that. And so why wouldn't you be able to earn an A at the end of that? My best example, I taught chemistry for a very long time. And I'm about to be careful, trigger warning. Stoichiometry is frightening for a lot of people, right? Just saying that word. Stoichiometry is a really interesting.
Is that a real word?
It is a real word. Yeah. Oh, okay. It's like how you find the mole ratios of reactions. If I mix this much and this much, what will I get out?
Okay. That's what I thought you were just making it up. Okay.
I will make up words later, not now. So stoichiometry scares the bejeebers out of people, right? And for the first month, kids will struggle and struggle and struggle to figure out how to do it. And when you come back in May, every kid can do a stoichiometry. Like, if I have this much and this much, what do I get? And so many kids over the last 100 years of chemistry have gotten a C in that class because it took them multiple weeks to figure that skill out, when at the end of the class, they can do it. Yeah. And how does that make any sense, right? If I can do, so it's not a race. Yeah. It's school is not a race, and it's also not a competition amongst other kids. It's, can you get to the learning? And if we can get people to think of school in that way, it will transform what we do.
Oh, I like that. I'm wondering, tell me if this analogy works. So as an old football coach, it's less important how your team plays the end of August. It's more important how they play at the end of the season, right?
Just ask Bill Belichick, right?
So and so that's all that really matters is how are you playing at the end, right? I mean,
how are you playing at the end, and how have you grown over the year, right? So
have you gotten any better?
Have you gotten any better? And ultimately, that's why we see 2 grades on our report card for EBR. You're seeing like your growth grade and your success grade. So if you look on the interactive report card, you will see a grade range. Like at this point, looks like the trajectory for you would be a B and a C, and you're adequately growing. So adequately growing doesn't mean that you're going to get an A. It means that in the current position you are, you're growing well. And we don't expect all kids to get an A. That's really personal choice where you want to end up. And so those two, how am I doing and how am I growing, are 2 separate questions, and they're very important. And the old model doesn't do that. The old model just, because I can get 100, 100, and a 10 and a 5 on 4 tests, or I can get a 10 and a 5, 100, and 100. I've got one kid getting better and one kid getting worse. They get the same score. So we think that it gives you more input.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Just want to say hi to Nidhi, who's joined us. Lori as well. Welcome. Appreciate the feedback from Lori and Nidhi. Notice that you're the parent of an incoming freshman this fall.
Right. Welcome.
Here's a question that is related to incoming freshmen. Yeah. It's been a couple of years now, but we have shifted our policy with incoming freshmen. For years, we had them take benchmark exams, right? So they had to take benchmark exams in English, math, and a foreign language. We've kind of backed off that in the last couple of years, and we've kind of relied more on the recommendations and the wisdom of their 8th grade teachers. I wonder if you might talk about that. Is it working out?
So last year was the first year that we went all in. And what that means is the kids do take a MAP exam, and they take those throughout their career in elementary and middle school. And we look at those scores. We have a conversation with their teachers. The difference last year and this year is that we are no longer giving a hard placement, which means you must be in this class. This is the level you get assigned. We're now giving kids choices. So we're saying, everything we know about you looks like you would be most successful in college prep English, but you are welcome to choose accelerated freshman English if you would like. And so we think that kids should have the power to choose their own schedule, because once you get to Stevenson High School, we would never tell you you couldn't take a course. And so we might wonder, if you've never taken an AP course before and your grades aren't great, and you come in and say, I want to take 5 AP classes, we might say, really? Have you thought that through? How can we support you?
Yeah.
How could the ILC help in that process? But we don't have any of those gates once you're here. And so it felt really odd that we had those gates on the way in. And so the last 2 years, we've allowed kids to make those choices. Last year, it's our first year with the kids in the school. We had the least number of kids change classes in their first semester. Our grades were the same as they've always been. So kids made their own choices and they still did well. Kids stayed in those classes that they picked. And my favorite part is not, you might first think like, well, everyone will choose the harder option. But that's not what happened. Because in the old days, we would place you into 3, sometimes you would get placed into 3 very difficult classes and you would be in them. Sometimes families now are saying, I only wanted 2 honors or accelerated courses and I'm going to take 1 college prep class. And so almost just as many kids chose to go down a level as chose to go up a level. And I think they're making decisions for the wellness. They're saying, well, I'm going to be involved in 3 clubs and I want to do a sport. And I don't need every single class to be at the highest level. And so we're really proud of those family conversations that, they met with their counselor, they made great choices for their family. I think it's the best way moving forward. And it is one of my favorite successes, because we also know that we have some parents who have no problem at all reaching out and telling us that they might need some help or to say, please move my kid a level. But some parents don't feel comfortable to do that. Or maybe they don't, maybe English isn't their first language and they're not quite sure how to navigate our instructional system. And so what happened was that system gave some kids privileges over others. And I think by allowing everyone to have a choice, we're making sure that all kids get to where they're the best place for them.
Oh, good.
So it's been awesome. I'm really excited about it.
So we're going to get ready to wrap things up here. We just have one more question, but a quick reminder, if you're watching this live, this video will remain on our Facebook page. Unfortunately, Troy and I don't get any better looking the longer the video stays, but so just a word of warning in advance. Right. So speaking of looks, let's 2 white guys, let's talk about diversity.
Sure.
Doesn't that make sense?
I think that's perfect.
So the demographic makeup of our student bodies changed quite a bit in my time here, certainly, and even in your time here. I just kind of wonder, what is the school doing to address this change? I mean, it's a reality, right? This place is much different than it was just 10 years ago.
And I got to say, it is definitely different, and it is my favorite, absolutely favorite thing about this school. There are 59 different languages spoken in the homes of people who come here. And so this is such an incredible mixing of cultures, and it's such a rich way for kids to grow up and interact with people of all different kinds. It's amazing, and it provides such a rich learning environment for, like, imagine a classroom discussion around a textbook when people can bring, in a high school where they're bringing multiple cultures, multiple country perspectives into a conversation. You're not going to find that anywhere else. And so it is such a strength of ours. Now, one of the things that we've done over the last 3 years it's just such fabulous work. We've, in our vision, we purposely put in some language around inclusivity. And from that, we built our Equity, Race, and Diversity Committee that we operate here at school. And we have four different groups that are operating, that are working to learn more about how does race, how does diversity play itself out in our classrooms, and how do we make sure that we honor all kids and make sure they feel like they belong. One thing that many of our kids and parents might know is that over the last few years, we've been giving our student voice survey. And one of the questions that is really interesting to us is when we ask kids, do you feel like you belong? And we want to make sure, if you ask me for a goal, like, is the goal for our kids to have an SAT score of 1,300 on average or a 27 ACT, I don't care. I would love to hear 100% of our kids say, I feel like I belong at that school, right? So all of these different groups that we have working on the race and diversity initiative to really think differently. And you have to imagine, you first have to say, like, what do I know about myself? How do I make sure that we move forward? It's great work. And ultimately, I think it's going to transform us as a school. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm excited for the future of it.
So one tough question, one softball question, and we'll get you out of here.
Sure.
Related to diversity, the reality is almost all the teachers at Stevenson are white.
Yeah.
But not even 60% of the kids are white.
Yep.
So what can we do? I mean, is there anything we can do to get more minority teachers in this place?
Yeah, and we have worked hard on that. We usually hire around 20 new teachers a year. And that is in all different divisions and all different spaces. And that's because some people retire and maybe we grow a little bit. And so that's kind of the average number. Now, when the faculty is about 315 and we get to hire 20 a year, that change process is slow. But I can tell you for sure, one of the things that we want to make sure we're bringing, how do we get more kids or more adults that can be role models for our kids? And so it is for sure a concern and a thought when we're hiring, and we have been careful to get our resumes out in different ways than we had in the past. So we used to just post them and hope we would get them. We've been purposefully sending our job openings to different colleges where we're like, please send us different candidates. So we're excited for the future. I think it'll be great.
Good. Last question. And this is sort of a comment and a question wrapped into one.
Oh boy.
So it seems to me that one of the sort of the shames of education is that you got a really good teacher, like you were, years ago.
Thank you.
I'm not that you're not a good teacher now, I don't know, but I mean, right. I guess this is kind of my question. You're named physics teacher of the year, but then before long you become science director and you're out of the classroom. It just seems like we have all these talented people and you lose them, right? You climb the ladder, which you certainly can do. I mean, it's part of life, but it's like, oh shucks, you've just lost a great teacher in the classroom. And I guess, do you miss the classroom? Do you wish you were back in the classroom?
I miss the classroom every single day. And my retirement, my plan for retirement, if my wife ever lets me, is to teach one class. I would love to find a school that would let me teach one physics class. Those 30 kids will be the best taught 30 kids in the history of America. I would love that. But on your point, when I took this job, I don't think of myself, like I still have people to teach. I'm now teaching adults. And so I feel like if I can take what I believe about instruction and assessment and help our teachers grow and get better, then I can have an impact on 4,000 kids at once, as opposed to the 130 kids that I might have had in my classroom. So while the thing I miss most about high school is that energy, right? The kids come in, they're wearing their green and gold on Friday, they're excited, they want to learn, they have all their life ahead of them, and they're just so full of energy in life. That's amazing. But in this case, I feel like I can have a bigger impact on more of them operating from this office. So
you're saying there's still a chance, just not here?
No. I'm saying there's a chance, and I'm hoping that somebody hires me when I retire. I just put my resume out there. So when I retire in 6 years or whatever that number is, remember that, Dr. Trudell, I'm available.
You're assuming you'll pass the background check in 6 years, right?
That's true. I guess we'd have to.
You got to start all over once you
I would
retire.
have to
You
start
gotta-
all
yeah,
over.
you
That's
gotta
right. I have
start
to
all over.
reapply.
Well, Troy, thanks very much for your
Of
time
course.
today.
It was
We
a hoot.
enjoyed it, and we hope to have you on again at some point down the road. I think we're going to need a little time to kind of decompress and cool off after this. So we'll talk to some other people first.
That's right.
But we'd like to get back to you down the road if we can and talk about a few more things.
Awesome. I'm going to need a hug before this is over.
Thanks everybody for watching live, and if you're watching us on demand, we're glad you joined us. And please post comments. We'll be happy to respond to them, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. So we'll see you again very soon on another edition of Lunch with Jim. Have a great day.
Hey, where's the lunch?